works. It's fine. Welcome to Blockchain Basement. My name's CJ. We're gonna have a really good show for you guys today. We're gonna we're gonna get back into the thread we started to cover on Thursday, covering some ZK rollup projects. I know it's been a hot narrative that all of you guys are interested in. We're going to talk Coinbase, some drama there. We're going to talk about their layer 2 base, but we're also going to be talking about breaking news. They're removing support for BUSD, so the plot thickens when it comes to the USDC, the stablecoin wars that we've been talking about a little bit here. Shout out to all of you guys. We're going to have we have some great basement dwellers in here with us today. Obviously, you've got me here. We've got Drew. We've got Johnny joining us, our resident ZK expert, also playing with all sorts of different DeFi projects. Might talk a little Sui. I know you guys love those picks. Actually, our creative director here was texting me about Sui today. We've got the beautiful Ali with us here today. We've got Biscuit Jesus on the board. BJ bringing in the hot. He actually got a response from Charles Hoskinson on Twitter. We might get into that a little bit. I don't see that tweet here, but
I don't know if we're allowed to.
Well, that's true. The mic is all banned forever, but a little spicy. Obviously, we got a lot of high IQ people here, well ahead of the curve. The news comes out, and we're like, yeah, we've been talking about this for 2 years now. So BJ lost a lot of friends and relationships due to his stance on that, but at least he's got a comment from Hoskinson,
We're your new friends.
Trade-offs. And as always, all of you guys in the chat, the show's all about you guys. We really appreciate having you guys in here. Hit us with all your questions. We love it. It's really a Q&A style show. We got Ace44, Friendly Neighborhood Plebs, Cyber Posty, Crypto Co, Kilowall, CryptoNet King Peasant, Captain Daddy, Crimson Caravan Company, Daniel Spath, Ninja Glock, Manowalk, Covert 4. I don't know what that's supposed to spell. Razmataz.
I like that. Ninja Glock Manowalk.
Yeah, I know it rhymes. It's like, throwing bars. Dwight Schrute of crypto. Love it. I prefer the attic where I can look down on everyone else. If that's very Dwight Schrute of you to say. Chemistry Bro, as always, blowing stuff up in the lab. Manowalk wants to drive the GTR. Aztec Warlord, Radio Face, Crypto Shock, Rolls 6969, Corey Harden, the one and only, DJ Imperative, Alaskan BTC. Good morning, basement. Oh, first time chatter, Mick Clausen? Clausen 73.
Yeah.
He wants to know more about Sui and how to get involved early. That was okay. So I'll just start there. I got a text this weekend from a buddy saying like, hey, have you heard of this project? And it was Sui Blockchain or Sui. I don't know how you guys want to say it. I guess probably Sui is the correct way to say it. S-U-I.
It's Latin.
Oh, there you go. BJ knows.
Sui Sibi Say, I think.
All right.
That's
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
It's a very high throughput chain. Seems to have a lot of VC backing with it. Very tied to Aptos in a lot of different ways. Uses the Move programming language. To me, that's one of the more interesting things. Move, what Coinbase or Meta, Facebook, all their stuff is written in Move. It allows a lot of programmers know what it is, or developers know what it is, know how to use it. It scales well. So just something to keep an eye on there. He was asking me very similar. How do you get involved? And what do you do? And from what I understand, the best way to do it is getting the actual Sui wallet, and they've got different tasks and things up. Just so you guys know, we've talked about it a little bit, operating on the testnet, interacting with the chain, whether it's through DeFi protocols, NFT protocols. A lot of you guys have been using decentralized DEXs, which is a little redundant, decentralized exchanges for perpetuals to get involved in the Arbitrum airdrop. Sui is going to be very similar. You get the wallet, and there's other things you guys can use. Drew, you were telling me, or maybe Johnny, maybe you guys have both been doing this. You've already been playing with that wallet a little bit, right? Or interacting with the Sui testnet?
Yeah, tell them about it, Johnny.
Yeah, what do you got, Johnny?
Get up
and
in there.
Pull that microphone up close.
Get it up in
there
there.
you go.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, they have a little web extension. Download Windows, and then once you download that, one of the main things is always whenever you're trying to get into any project, one of the main things you want to do is first find their official Twitter and Discord and get into those, so that way you have legit links. Last thing you want to do is be clicking on something and realize it's not even the right link. I almost fell victim to the Phantom wallet. It was on Google Play for like a few days, and I was just getting ready to fund it, and then all of a sudden it came out that it was a fake Phantom, which I kind of suspected because I hadn't heard nothing from any official things. I thought I just found it real quick before everybody else. So it was a good lesson and a good thing that I didn't fund it. But stuff like that always keeps me make sure you guys don't download wrong links, and go to the Discord, go to their Twitters. Once you get that link put on your Chrome, I think there's for a couple. I think they might have it for Apple. I'm not too sure. I use Windows. But just inside that wallet alone, you can request test tokens, and then they have right there where you can stake it into their little pool. If you continue, I don't know if it's every hour. I know they change it every so often whenever it starts to get flooded.
Yeah.
But most of it that I've seen was NFT type projects coming on where you collect the tokens and a little bit of a staking as well. But they don't, one thing to keep in mind is that they don't ever come out with any type of list of qualifications that are going to get you in said airdrop, because officially there is no airdrop. These are all just hopes and dreams that people that are into tech. I personally, I enjoy playing on these different platforms to see what they have to offer, see what kind of new things that are going on, see how they're, what's going on.
No, that's a really good point, because we get asked that a lot. People say like, oh, well, how do I know, like, what's the minimum actions required to be qualified for the airdrop? And to his point, you don't necessarily know. You're doing this in hopes that there will be an airdrop, and in anticipation, like, no, hey, there's a test net. If I interact with this test net, if there is an airdrop, I will be qualified to get some tokens. We've talked about it a little bit on here. Generally speaking, actions and volume tends to matter somewhat. You want to connect, you want to open up several different wallets that can qualify you several different times, potentially. Notable airdrops, obviously the Uniswap one is the one that at least got my attention. Blur, a lot of people that were using the Blur marketplace, again, they just got an airdrop and that token kind of paid off for them. Yep. But like to his point, they're not going to come out and say, oh, if you do this and this and this, you're going to get an airdrop, because it's supposed to be kind of not disclosed and that sort of thing. They're trying to incentivize people to start testing the network. So it really is for you, if you want to learn, like he just said, like if you enjoy this stuff, if you like interacting with this stuff, it's a great way to get involved and stay ahead of things early, because you can start to make determinations way ahead of the curve if you're using the testnet and be like, yeah, I've been using this testnet, it's working really fast, or, oh, it's very clunky and confusing, I can't really see this taking off really fast. And so you can kind of start to think and decide for yourself some of the different actions and projects. Is like, oh man, I like this one, I'm gonna keep, so yeah, somebody, Manowalk said the infamous Johnny. Yeah, he's the guy, he does a lot of the deep digging here for us. He turned many people in this office onto OP, same idea. Yep. That's how he got your OP, right? Was through an airdrop, and you were just playing with it, and then all of a sudden, boom, I've got this OP, and here we are.
Yeah, OP was. I had heard of OP and Arbitrum for quite a while, just being inside the Discords and Ethereum and the devs that talked about rollups and how they were going to change the current stance with ETH not being able to currently scale in at its current stage. So obviously they were correct.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously it pays to be early. So real quick, we're going to get into coin market cap just for a minute. Fairly flat on Bitcoin on the day, coming back in at 23.2. It was up a little bit higher than that earlier. But interesting, it kind of traded in a range this weekend, went up to almost 24, pulled back down to the low 23s, but nothing extremely notable over the weekend, in my opinion. But it was interesting if you look at the 24 hours. XEM, this is an older project. I'm shocked to, I'm interested to see some of these older projects moving. 45% on the day. That's interesting. Block stacks we covered on this show for you guys. Smart contracts on Bitcoin, something to keep an eye on in this cycle. We know Bitcoin obviously is going to be here for a long time. Very strong project. If we can get smart contracts on it, something to be aware of. Singularity Net, Ajax, Ben was saying we're going to have Ben Gershom on the morning show here soon. Neo, another, Chinese projects that I think is pumping partly due to what's been going on over there. Yep. Synthetics, I believe they've already settled their beef with the SEC. So that's another one that's interesting to me, watching chains. Dash, another older one. So anyway, let's see if we have anything on the weeklies. Is probably going to be very similar. Anchor, strong recovery on the week. Optimism still holding strong. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we'll talk about it right now before we get into the ZK stuff. Yeah. This is something I didn't get a chance to get into much last week, but this is the big news of last week. Coinbase launches Base to help developers build dApps on chain. So Coinbase, the second largest crypto exchange by trading volume behind Binance. So and we covered a story on Around the Blockchain. If you guys aren't subscribed to Around the Blockchain, be sure to go check out that channel. Industry experts all over the cryptoverse come in and talk about their different takes. So Coinbase now, is it IEX or IGX? I can't remember the
IEX.
IEX has basically said they're setting them up to be the federally approved custodian of digital assets. This was their plan for. Admittedly, this was their plan for FTX. What they were working with regulators to accomplish. That will more or less start to set up Coinbase with a monopoly, especially here in the U.S. on being the custodian of digital assets. I think I've just shared it on this channel before. I think that is the strategy. Let Central, Circle be the issuer of the stablecoins USDC, Coinbase be the custodian and the deliverer of that to the public. And now you can basically, through digital assets, circumvent the traditional banking system, and you can go straight from central banks right to the people. So the central banks now have the ability to literally pump the economy instead of pumping it to banks and then hoping banks follow suit. It just speeds up that process even more. Ben mentioned, and I tend to agree with this, that what we're going to see over the next, whether it's this year or next year, mid this year, playing out through next year, the United States has mastered the art of kicking the can down the road when it comes to paying. Yeah, I'm serious. When it comes to paying the dues for bad monetary policy, irresponsible, physical irresponsibility, they've gotten very good at just kicking the can down the road. Let the next guy deal with it. Let the next campaign deal with it. The next administration, whatever you want to say. And they're setting the stage for bad, scary, horrible recession this year, and then we're gonna say next year it's gonna be all about how we saved it, how it was recovery, and how if it wasn't for everything we were doing, you'd all be screwed. You love us, you need to give us more power, more responsibility, and here we are. Oh, thanks, Crypto Steve. I love you too.
It's pretty.
So yeah,
I just wanted what you said about we literally lack monetary responsibility at this point, and all these macro doom and gloomers are always putting out this I'm a prepper and I'm very familiar with the Gold Bug initiative and everything that's behind, the worry behind the national debt and everything like that. But the problem with that is that they're applying logical monetary responsibility to a situation that has completely left that behind 50 years ago.
Yeah, they left logic. They threw logic out the window.
Gone.
Yeah.
So, it's what do you think should have happened when we hit a negative GDP similar to the Civil War when flu season hit? There should have been a pretty massive pullback in general. It just shot right back up, more injections. The system is absolutely addicted to quantitative easing, and it does it in cycles so that elected leaders can stay elected and get reelected, and their initiatives can be pushed forward. And the debt ceiling being risen has no red or blue specification to it. It happens on every single side of it. So it doesn't. The only time that we didn't have a debt ceiling rise in the short term was around 2001. So. I just wanted to say that, what you say is completely true, and I get stuck in these arguments with these macro people all the time because they're trying to apply reason to a situation that is well into the funny money scenario. So yeah.
Speaking of reason, chat is very interested what's behind you, Drew.
Oh,
what you're talking about? Oh.
What's TJ eating today?
My sandwich. What am I eating? Yeah, it's ham, mustard, salami, sriracha, and cheese. There
no
you go.
mayo, guys.
No mayo. Oh, no white
mayo.
sauces for me of any kind. Basically, do with that as you will.
I have a question from the real Crypto Stevo.
Sure.
Are you at a stopping point with this article? Or?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll come back to it.
Well, he asked, why does some people think ISO 220 will onboard crypto as a payment system? I think it's a setup for CBDCs, maybe a crypto stablecoin, but I doubt it. I can't see any bank using a volatile, decentralized cryptocurrency.
I tend to agree with that. Yeah. I think it's a narrative that got put out there and pushed pretty hard. Actually, a lot of stuff has come out now that's saying a lot of that stuff isn't even, the ISO 222 stuff isn't even recognized by a lot of the people that are supposedly the ones championing it and pushing it forward. So yeah, I don't understand why so many people are putting so much stock in that. Did you have a thought on that, Drew?
I think it came from the fact Ripple and I believe as well Stellar were on the governance board or the development board for ISO 20022, but it's basically just a messaging standard that financial messages have to fall within in the next section of how Swift is going to operate. So at best, I could see, coins that are designing their messaging system in that regard to potentially be chosen to communicate with Swift in that transfer of value. But that's not a guarantee. And the whole rumor mill began because Ripple was involved with that board that, kind of helped put it together. So, there is some, there's some logic in questioning, why would they be involved with the board in designing this for the traditional finance system? But on the other side, it's not a hard-sided get-in pass that these cryptos have. I mean, there's still going to be major amounts of losers, and there's going to be a few winners when it comes to that kind of communication. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I tend to agree, and it's very narrative driven. It's all speculation, so you got to keep that in mind too. And the more, I think it's a great question, and I encourage you guys to question those common narratives. Like, if this doesn't make sense to you, then take that into your consideration with your investing and move right along. For me, I didn't dig into it very much because I stay away from payment coins in general for exactly this reason. There's way too many politics involved with what's going to be used and why it's going to be used, what's going to help CBDCs, what's going to hurt CBDCs. Are they going to create their own? Are they going to use the private? All those sorts of different things. So for me, a lot of this narrative about, oh, these are going to be the chosen 10 coins. It was just like, I don't follow that.
Yeah,
so.
it's a dangerous group think. And, that's where you get situations where people will put, 90% of their portfolio inside of a speculative ISO coin that they think is just going to moon. And then they get the angry Reddit post about how much money they lost, and everyone, gets to dance around that grave for a while. But just, I like to, speculate with these small coins, but I don't put anything more than 3 or 4% of my entire portfolio in anything that's not, Bitcoin or Ethereum. Like, that's just how I operate. I like to speculate with the small amounts of money and then let that turn into a lot and roll it back into Bitcoin. So
there you go. So I'm gonna roll through this because basically the reason I started on this base thing, it is interesting to me because they're they're building on the Optimism open source stack. So I think this is a big part as why the Optimism narrative gets stronger and stronger and stronger. We do know Arbitrum number leading right now between the two of them when it comes to TVL. I haven't looked recently, but if you guys want to pull up DeFi Llama, both Arbitrum and Optimism doing extremely well when it comes to layer 2s. Now, this is very interesting to me, from Coinbase, and they haven't done anything when it comes to their own chain, their own token. And again, there's nothing saying this is going to have a token, and I don't think they could say that until a lot of this regulatory framework gets worked out. However, they do seem to be set up as the chosen exchange to be, pulling through a lot of this stuff. We do know Brian Armstrong's been in Washington lately talking with regulators. In the past, Coinbase has homed in on the trading and exchange side of its business, but from utility perspectives, it's still too hard for developers to build useful decentralized applications, dApps, and for users to actually use those things on chain. In an effort to expand further into the development space, Coinbase is building Base to make it quote unquote dead easy for developers to build apps and for users to access those dApps through Coinbase products. Our goal is to bring about phase 4 of Coinbase master plan, which actually maybe we should read what Coinbase master plan is. Not today, but maybe we'll get into this, the Coinbase secret master plan. That's actually a good one for tomorrow.
Well, there's so much to this story you're talking about because IEX was a partner of FTX.
Right.
And now, that FTX has fallen, Coinbase is absorbing that, partner that needs someone else to partner with. And it just, after the dust is settling more and more, I just feel like FTX was just a fall guy for Coinbase to swallow up the entire American crypto market.
I tend to agree. They set him up to fail. Brian is not stupid. He saw what was going on and he said, we'll let them dig their own grave and we'll be there we'll be the perfect solution to step right in when all of that happens. And we've got all the reasons for regulation. We are already a public company. We've already subjected to tons of disclosures. We're a lot more transparent. I do, for better or worse, I do think Coinbase is one-to-one backed. I do think they're completely solvent. I think, that there's a lot of positive ways that Coinbase has been run, but it's been and I think by design, it's been very hard to tell where their true allegiance lie.
Speaking of weird allegiances, so Binance didn't buy FTX and bail them out, and now Coinbase is delisting BUSD.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. And they are obviously, they've been pushing, they've been the big proponent of swapping USDT to USDC, no fees. If you want to, the best place to do that, take it all over to Coinbase. We'll do it for you for free, which is obviously directly supporting the interests of the United States government to get as many people into USDC as possible. And I showed that graph last time, how quickly USDC caught up to USDT. If you go to DeFi Llama, pull up stable coins, the gap was massive. Many, probably 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, almost the entire market cap of what it was now was the gap back in 2021. Now the gap, we can go look, closed coin market cap, dang it. Yeah, give me 1 second. So now
Enhance.
we've got USDC sitting at $42 billion market cap, BUSD down all the way to 10. And then it's and Tether at 70. So it's within about $20 billion of catching Tether. Binance, BUSD getting crushed in market cap. And I say probably by the end of this year, we will see USDC eclipsing USDT, if not by next year. So within 2 years, we'll definitely see USDC, which is US dollar coin, being the #1 stable coin on the entire market. And again, this is no accident. We saw reason USDT got such a huge lead. It was the only game in town for years and years and years. Then we saw other people coming in trying to compete. USDC, I believe, came to market in 2019. I could be wrong. You're gonna have to fact check me on that, but they closed the gap extremely quickly. Let's see. Crypto Big EO, TJ and Crew set up Twitch accounts so I could interact with the DGens of my favorite channel. Yeah, we started the show for the DGens, for the basement.
For you specifically.
Yeah, just for you, Crypto
That's right.
Biggie, I guess is how you would say that.
Crimson Caravan. I
A
just
big
want
A.
Crimson Caravan saying you can only request soy tokens every 30 minutes. I think that's accurate if you're doing it through the wallet directly, but Johnny had showed me that it's clutchy.io, right? Is that one?
There's some of them. So, yeah, sometimes you can find little glitches, but
Clutchy.io has that request button that works like every 5 minutes. I remember it's at that blue website. I think it's clutchy.io, and it had like the little blue button. You can just make it rain dev tokens out of that thing. So yeah, have fun. Just wanted to give you that shout.
Yeah, so this was the key part of this base chain right here. Base is built on the MIT licensed OP stack in collaboration with the layer 2 blockchain Optimism. So again, this is why Optimism is getting stronger and stronger in my opinion. Obviously, Matic, Polygon, we're going to look at a little bit as a zero knowledge protocol. A lot of these things that you've heard of now, finding out that they have zero knowledge. They've either adopted it or rolled it into their stuff recently. A number of crypto businesses, platforms, marketplaces, and infrastructure firms have committed to building on Base. A Coinbase person told TechCrunch. So where I think this is going to end up, not today, not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but as time goes on, I think what Coinbase is setting up to do now that it's stepping into this role as the kind of federally approved digital asset custodian, you will see, just like you have in most of the internet, we've got Facebook and Google have pretty much filled the void of identity layer of the internet. We're going to see Coinbase filling the role of digital asset identity in a lot of different ways. And just like you log into websites with Google, just like you log into websites with Facebook to show who you are, soon you're going to interact basically with all Web3 sites by logging in with Coinbase, at least here in the United States. So you want to get in and interact with this game? Don't worry, it's all of this stuff is going to be handled on the back end of coin, on Base, layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum. It's all going to be handled, on chain, but you don't have to understand it. You don't have to connect 10 different wallets to it. You don't have to do anything, because if you think about the onboarding process for Web3 right now, it's very clunky. Oh, you got to connect your MetaMask. You got to bridge this. You got to make sure you're on the right network. Oh no, you're not on Smart Chain. You got to be on Arbitrum. Oh, you got to have Optimism plugged in. You have to have a very high technical understanding to interact with Web3 today. In the future, it's going to be, or just like logging with Steam for another example for gamers, or Battle.net, or a lot of these other, Epic, basically you will log in with Coinbase and your wallet will get added to and subtracted to. It doesn't matter which blockchain you're using. It doesn't matter which game you're playing. You log out, you'll see your assets go up and down. And I think that's what this move right here, this layer 2 scaling solution for Ethereum built on the Optimism stack is setting up for. So
yay, centralization, the antithesis of what we actually want.
Yes, exactly.
But adoption. So it's kind of like this weird Dias needle where it's like centralization versus adoption, getting completely screwed and losing everything we care for. But adoption.
Great point. And it's like the guy, pushing the two buttons, which one do you push? And I would argue that hopefully, and this is why it's important to have these conversations and talk about, and ZKs can solve a lot of this where it does help to have safeguards in place even when centralized things are working. But I do hope over time, if you see your USDC sitting next to maybe a decentralized asset, and one's gaining purchasing power over time, and one's losing purchasing power over time, it helps show the value of decentralization. If you get locked out of your account and you realize, wait a minute, I didn't like not having control over my own funds. I'm going to withdraw from this centralized, custodian, and I'm going to self-custody my funds. Hopefully, and again, I'm not optimistic, no pun intended, but hopefully over time we can stress the importance of self-sovereignty, self-custody, and owning your own things, holding your own things. And I do think we saw a lot of adoption come in through things like
that's Klaus Schwab.
No.
He said you will own nothing and you will love it.
Yeah, you will own nothing and be happy. And it's an unfortunate reality that I think a lot of people are going to fall into, but where we can combat that is with education and with understanding.
Yes.
If people that understand what happened with Celsius, people that understand what happened with FTX, unfortunately, a lot of the mainstream believes like, oh, FTX is crypto. And it's our job to educate them and say, you know what? No, FTX was a centralized, it was the model of traditional finance that failed. It was not the crypto model that failed. And it's us as crypto users that have the opportunity to educate people and to kind of change that narrative and reality of what we live in right now, where a lot of people prefer to defer responsibility onto another party. They don't want to be responsible for their own assets. They don't want to be responsible for their own finances, which is insane to me. It's baffling that people want to obfuscate responsibility of one of their most important things. You know, their stored energy, their stored resources to use for themselves or their families in the future. We're going to put that responsibility on somebody else. Like that doesn't make any sense. That other person probably doesn't have your best interest at heart. They definitely don't have the understanding that you have of your goals and where you want to go. But again, it takes work and it takes ownership. And that's obviously that's something I'm passionate about, something I care about. We need to take our responsibility when it comes to our own lives, whether it's physically, whether it's financially, whether it's mentally, whether it's health-wise. Again, we can see what happens when we pass the buck on what health decisions should be made for ourselves and for our bodies. They're going to make bad decisions.
Stay on target.
Stay on target. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about ZK rollups. All right. So this is a thread, guys, that we didn't really get into in a great detail. Talking about ZK proofs, talking about rollups, talking about modular. And I will go ahead and just share this one's a few things. This should keep you guys busy for the week. You've probably heard of some of these. Matic, Immutable, Mina. Those are some I like. Loop Ring is another big one. Zen is in here. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just tweet this out. TJ, or it's at @hitnetwork_ there. So you guys can keep up with this. This is the list basically of all things ZK. You know, Rose, which I think that's secret, right? So anyway, we're going to read down this because I thought it was interesting. They do get into some specific details.
This was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Drew said he just sat here and listened
I drank like 4 IPAs and just listened to this thing over and over
Listen to the AI. We're going to actually, basically the AI pretty much just reads through this text, but...
Wait, Drew, I didn't know you were an absolute sheep.
What?
You don't like IPA?
I love IPA.
You got convinced by the alcohol industry so they could sell you your shaft that it was good?
No, it works faster and longer.
Right.
Okay, boomer.
Look, if anybody tells you they drink IPAs for the flavor, they're lying.
It's higher
for the higher alcohol content.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so is Listerine.
Yeah, well,
got him.
You know, I also drink that too. But, you know, it's basically, I don't know. I used to live on the road in a van. You know, so
down by the river,
or next to the park, or behind a studio or whatever. So IPA, it's great calories.
Yeah, I didn't know how to respond to this. Somebody in the morning stream today said, I can't picture Ben or TJ in jail. Now, Drew, I could picture in jail, but the two of them, not so much. I don't know
in jail
if that was a compliment for you or a diss for us, or I don't really understand.
I was only in jail for like 30 minutes. They let me go for like $26.
That's right. They were scared of your mom. She's going to come break some knees.
No,
watch out.
Well, they busted me. We got in a fight with known gang members, and I ended up handing them over pretty subdued. So they were happy with me.
No wonder you and Johnny get along so well. Okay, so here we go. The upcoming years are, and this is a narrative, guys. I think it's going to be a big narrative for 2023, and beyond. There's going to be winners in this space. There's going to be losers. Don't blindly invest in any of this stuff. Obviously, use your own judgment. This is just something that's really piqued my interest. Because and this will explain it, I believe, in this thread, that, you know, ZK basically allows actions to happen without any knowledge of all of the recipient of the data, if that makes sense. So all it needs to know is this data, you know, like when this gets here, it's supposed to move from there. All this needs to know is, okay, it's here. It's time to move it here. And I don't need to know what got it to this place to begin with. I mean, that's a very rough description of it, but hopefully they explain it in a little bit more detail here. The upcoming years are shaping up to be the battle of ZK rollups and highly modular projects, which they will explain what modular means. You know, obviously you guys probably know the definition of modular, but But what the heck are Zero, Snark, E, and optimistic rollups, and why does it matter? And the thread explains why 8 interesting ZK rollups and modular projects released, 8 upcoming ZK rollup and modular projects. All right, what? A part of ZK is hailed as the next big thing solution in scaling Ethereum, but that isn't the whole picture. ZK proof technologies are broad field, and the movement has spawned many variants to address proof of ownership, privacy-enabled identity verifications, and scalability. I will say, side note, a lot of ZK information comes out of a lot of privacy projects, and privacy projects generally tend to be on the more cutting edge when it comes to the technology side of things. They're not necessarily the best pumpers, so they don't get a lot of people's attention. They're not necessarily the best to speculate on because they're going to be generally suppressed by centralized authority. But they do tend to move the bar or the ball or whatever you want to say. They keep innovation. They move innovation forward because they're always trying to stay ahead of that tech curve. So as an investor, you will encounter these phrases: ZK DApps. And ZK obviously stands for zero knowledge, guys. If you haven't put that together yet, you got them. You got other problems, I guess. ZK Snarks, ZK Rollup, Optimistic Rollup, ZK Starks, monolithic versus modular. So, and this is something again that this is interesting to me, looking at monolithic versus modular. I know BJ, you were talking about this a while ago. In general, ZK proofs allow one party, the prover, to prove to another party, the verifier, that a statement is true without revealing any information beyond the validity of that statement itself. So that was the example I was just using with this thing. You can prove that this cap is sitting right here next to this thing to the can, and the can knows it can move it over here without needing to know how the cap got to this location. It just knows it's here, and now that I know it's here, I move it here, and then now this person has no knowledge of anything that got it here, and then it goes down the line, if that makes sense. You can do that with a lot of different transactions, a lot of different applications. ZK Snarks versus ZK Starks. Both technologies tackle the issue above in different ways. While there are other solutions, the two are giants battling it out in the public eye, but there's no king to rule them all. Each has its own benefits. Each has its own downsides. And I would say that's true across any and all blockchains. Everybody says, like anybody that says it's one chain that rules them all, I tend to disagree. Each chain has pros. Each chain has cons. It's all trade-offs. And you have to decide what trade-offs you need for your particular application. I do think the market will generally settle on a few different providers for a handful of different tasks based on the trade-offs. Like some people need really high throughput and less security because they're doing small, quick transactions. That means they probably don't need Bitcoin. They're not trying to be a store of value or money or highly things that could be prone to attack. If you're trying to do in-game actions, and a lot of people would argue you don't need a blockchain at all for that. And again, that's where the debate, and that's what makes things interesting in this space. Like I said, it's all trade-offs, something to keep in mind. ZK rollups are layer 2 scaling solution that increase the throughput on Ethereum by moving computation and state of storage off-chain, meaning you don't need the insane level of security that happens on every single transaction. You can use a layer 2 to do a lot of the back and forth, and then roll that up to the main chain to get that security to make sure nobody's doing a double spend, gaming the system. Obviously, a lot of this stuff applies to DeFi. That has been I would say the far and away number one use case that's come out of Ethereum is DeFi applications, and being able to have finance, lending, borrowing in a decentralized way without having to go through a centralized entity. And again, a lot of people would argue this is a need for centralization because it can do it better, it can do it faster, but then it requires trust. And as we saw with Celsius, as we saw with BlockFi, as we saw with Nexo and a handful of other ones, where there is trust, there is corruption, generally speaking. So you can't trust humans. You can only trust protocols.
Speaking of corruption, they're bringing up Arizona in the chat. I'm not going to go all the way down there, but yeah, they're asking about why Sonola is trending. So.
I'm curious.
I can't go into it here, but just type in Google those words and you'll find out, Basement. You'll have fun. I'm not going to bring it up here.
ZK rollups process thousands of transactions in a batch and then only post some minimum summary data to the mainnet. So let's see. Validity, proof Starks or Snarks, ZK rollup, Validium, Volition, Optimistic rollup, Plasma. So obviously, Optimism uses optimistic rollups. Matic is adding in ZKs. Let's see, what was the other thing on this? Mina is one that helps people use ZK proofs on different. You could use ZK DApps basically, or decentralized applications. Mutable X mostly being used for gaming. these are organized by market cap. So if you go down here, and this was one that I was interested. I didn't realize Tezos was using.
I did not either.
ZK. Tezos is another older project, been around for a long time. Already settled their beef with the SEC, as far as I believe. You don't quote me on that 100%.
Get BDM in. So Brian David Marshall's somebody I work with for Magic, and he's heavily involved with that. And Zvi Marskowitz, I think, is one of the OG devs over there.
Sounds smart.
I guess sneak him over here. Yeah,
that'd be good. Some cryptographic ZK snark / Stark proof that can that those changes are this is a summary data that defines the changes that should be made to the Ethereum state, and some cryptographic ZK snark / Stark proof that those changes are correct. Optimistic versus ZK. Key difference: Optimistic relies on fraud proofs. ZK relies on zero knowledge proofs, obviously by its name. And this is the big, this is the big debate here, where some people believe you want to go linear. I tend to think exponential is better because it's exponential. As you get more transactions happening, the amount of scale can reach faster and bigger, and you're not going to run into the same scalability issues we've been running into right now. But obviously, it's a kind of a chicken and egg ish. Implementation. Optimistics are easier to implement. ZK is harder to implement, but broader features. Meaning, if you can get it done over time, you have a lot more flexibility versus moving it the next step into the cycle. We can get from A to B, and now we're functioning much better at B, and maybe through that functionality we can get to C and D, where ZK is like, well, we know we're going to need to get to D. Why don't we just build something that's good enough for D as it is? And then it might take longer, it might be harder. Kind of, if you want to think about the difference between what Ethereum is having to do upgrading in sections versus Cardano saying, like, know what? Let's just move over and build a whole new chain from scratch, because we know where this is going to go 10 years from now. We need to be prepared for that. We don't need to baby step it all the way up, along the way. I mean, that's again, a lot of these analogies I'm going to give you are rough, but I'm just trying to help you kind of wrap your head around a lot of this stuff. So, and again, here, I will actually retweet this so you guys can read it as you have more time.
I listened to it over and over again.
Yeah.
Just set something on the kettle to drink. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it was great weekend. It's not the weekend for you guys anymore, but weekday activity for you guys getting smarter. Okay, now this is something important, guys. This is one of the main things I think ZK proofs really help for is modular blockchains. Most blockchains we have today are monolithic, which means they are formed from and consist of a single block, meaning block 1 goes here, block 2. You got block 3, then you add block 4, and you go in the chain. Modular blockchains are more like Legos, meaning you can change out data availability, execution, and consensus parts. Which is kind of more like here, where you can say, okay, I want to use this chain, but I don't need this part of it at all, or I want the personal identity part to be private for this application, but I want the personal identity part to be public for this application. Or like if you want to think of vital records and some of these things, where it's like, oh, if you're using it in a hospital scenario, the doctor can see what he needs to see, but you're using the same chain to plug into, say, a gaming situation. And no, the gaming company doesn't need to know all of my vital information and personal records, but it can all live on one chain. So different dApps have different access to different things. They allow you to define your own environment, and the question of this type of rollup or that type of ZK proof becomes kind of redundant, as the future modularity increasingly allows you to build flexible Lego castle that doesn't shoehorn you into a rigid monolithic system. Again, if you're talking about trade-offs of chains, meaning you're not stuck using only this one use case of chain, because all of the stuff is there. You can say, okay, I want it for this app, I want it to do this thing. For this dApp, I want it to do that thing. And I can stay on the same chain to do that. So over time, I do think as these things get built out and start to develop an ecosystem, especially if it can remain on Ethereum where there already is an ecosystem, it becomes very interesting to see how these things get used. And it's what a lot of these interoperability projects are focused on, being able to be interchangeable, so that way, hey, we can work within the Ethereum ecosystem, and then if something else comes along and starts to develop a very robust ecosystem.
Are they designed specifically for EVM only?
I'm trying
to figure that out.
Yeah, right now. Most of them are designed to be EVM compatible. And that's where certain things, it starts to struggle when they're not EVM compatible, because so far what we're seeing is tons and tons and tons of stuff being built out for EVM compatible chains and trying to help them work together, and things that aren't struggle to get included into that. So that is, and
but
again,
it's like their version of scaling, correct? Like
Whose
it's
version?
not necessarily a new consensus, and I'm not saying it's not, but it's more Ethereum needs to figure out how to scale.
correct.
This is the answer. So other chains may not need this whatsoever. Potentially.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
potentially.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm still learning this.
No, that's absolutely right. It's a scaling solution, and some of these chains may know that they won't run into these problems when they hit a certain size, because a lot of it is like you scale to a point and then you realize, oh, we're stuck here. We need to scale better. And the Ethereum chain worked okay, and again, they saw a lot of these problems coming a long time ago, which is where a lot of the splits from Ethereum happened way back in the day. Several of the different founders of a lot of today's smart contract platforms were all there at the beginning of Ethereum as well. People like Charles, people like Gavin Wood, people like Joseph Lubin. He might still be pretty much involved with Ethereum, but a lot of them have gone on to create other projects knowing the scalability issues, the interoperability issues that existed,
Right.
and trying to work around them. And they've all got slightly different approaches to how they solve these problems. And it's definitely not an end all be all. It's definitely not the end of the race right now. I think this is something we're going to be talking about for probably the rest of, my working lifetime, most likely. So
What's interesting, so it looks like, just to play Cardano advocate here.
I knew it was coming.
Well, where Cardano is potentially, and maybe they don't, is attempting to increase block sizes. Whereas, if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like Ethereum's not even trying to do that. They're just trying to make things more efficient by taking the layer 1 and the layer 2. And then it looks like there's a very specific difference between an optimistic rollup and a ZK rollup. Only one of them is EVM compatible, and the other is not.
I believe both are EVM optimistic, and ZK are both EVM compatible. But yes, everything else you said is true. They're not trying to increase TPS on the main chain, kind of like Lightning is to Bitcoin.
So
A lot of these layer 2s are to Ethereum.
Yeah, so this is saying, unlike optimistic rollups, which use fully EVM compatibility virtual machines, ZK rollups use their own virtual machines. This produces a downside of needing higher computing power to generate zero-knowledge proof.
But they are compatible with the main chain, is what I'm saying. They are compatible with the current virtual. They might use their own, but there is compatibility. Yes. So there is more, like you said, more computing power, kind of like what it was saying. It's more difficult to implement these things. It's not just plug it in, roll it up, clean it up, and pass it through to the main chain, which is more what a roll up is. Yeah. ZK is a whole different way of coming to that solution that does require more computing power, more energy, et cetera, et
Which
cetera.
I love the idea of this, but it still fundamentally feels like you're trying to patchwork a fundamentally broken chain versus a chain that just works.
It's different.
But I know I have my confirmational biases here. That's why it was so important when we did talk about that. It's like you don't always want to look at this through a certain lens. Like there's validity. Like this is a really cool technology, and like Ethereum needs this.
Right. And you're right. This is designed to solve specific problems on a specific chain, that being Ethereum. Other chains don't have this problem yet for a variety of reasons. One, they may not have hit the scale. Two, they may have been built different to not ever have this problem when they do hit the scale. And that's kind of what I was saying with trade-offs. A lot of people would say, why are we trying to fix Ethereum? We should just scrap it and move on to a chain that's built for this from the beginning. To BJ's point with Cardano, with a lot of other people, looking at Cosmos, looking at Polkadot, looking at a lot of these things that are designed to be modular from the start versus trying to adapt a chain that isn't, that is monolithic and help add modular type capability to it. And that's the never ending question of, should we just start over? And everybody's got their own reasons, their own biases, their own incentives. Obviously, if you're deep in Ethereum, you're incentivized to figure out how to solve this problem on Ethereum. If you're not, and you're just looking at this from the outside in, you're like, well, why don't we just introduce a whole different technology? And,
that's where things might get weird too, is say with everything switching from proof of work to proof of stake with Ethereum, and then the fact that they're not really fully proof of stake yet. They still have to do the sharding. They still have to do the docking. They have to still do the scaling. But say all the developers that are, let's say, very egotistical and believe that they have the best solution, then you have all these ZK rollups. You're just going to end up with internal strife very quickly, too. So I think that's something to watch out for too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something we've seen throughout crypto from the very beginning with the block wars and, to your point, the merge, the split, the code is law, Ethereum versus Ethereum Classic. That's kind of what spawned a lot of the Cardano stuff. Johnny, you said you had something?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, don't understand. They think that Ethereum scaling or using L2s is fixed to something that's broken. Ethereum is not complete. The L2s just allow it to get scale faster. But once Ethereum adds its sharding, what do you think is going to happen to the L2s? They're going to scale up just as much as Ethereum did. And everything that they are able to do is just going to continue to complement. And as far as what's going to be next, I don't think anything can really be a serious competitor to Ethereum until it reaches about 50% of across the board on anything.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That's
50% usage.
I don't know, 50% adoption
ecosystem. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say to Urkelson there. He said he's 100% with BJ. He was saying Zcame seems irrelevant if ADA scales properly. And that's the
keyword
if.
is if.
Yeah, that's the big if there. If they can get people actually using it, dApps built on it, and wallets downloaded, used across the world, and that's where Ethereum has and Bitcoin and Ethereum have a huge head start when it comes to actual ecosystem, actual use, being able to pay, again, people use this when you're talking about payments with Bitcoin a lot, being able to buy and sell things across those payment rails, that matters. It might seem techie, it might seem nerdy. If you're at the Bitcoin conference, you heard Jack Mallers talking about what they're doing with the Strike application. And when you really grasp what it is, like, oh no, I can pay for something with Bitcoin or with dollars or maybe other things, but I'm not using Visa, I'm not using MasterCard, I'm not using the traditional payment rails that have existed. I'm using Lightning Network even to send dollars. That matters, and that's a big deal. If you can update those across all those Verifone applications, having the compatibility with the real world applications. And to Johnny's point, Ethereum, when it comes to DeFi, when it comes to decentralized applications, it's way ahead of a built out ecosystem. And so they are continually improving their ecosystem. Sure, some other ecosystem, Cardano, Avalanche, Polkadot, Cosmos, we talk about them a lot on this channel. Those have a potential to catch up. And the longer it takes Ethereum to solve some of these issues, the more time they have to catch up on ecosystem and on adoption, really.
Yes.
But it becomes a network effect at some point where, if you're going to build a Web3 game at this point, you're very incentivized to make it compatible with Ethereum because that's where most of the users are. That's where and then if you're a developer, that's why you always talk about the battle between users and developers, wallets, applications being used, transactions being sent. A lot of it is in the DeFi world right now, but when the gaming space takes off, it might be Immutable X, that's using some of these things to do a lot of this stuff. And, and that's what makes it fun. That's why we have to continue to learn about all of it because, it's going to take a while before we see. And again, I think 10 years plus before we can really say no, this one's the winner. Like it was Cardano or it was Ethereum or it was Cosmos. We're not going to know most likely until if you think about the internet, we know the big winners right now, Amazon, Facebook, Google, those would be the big three, I would say, that have won. Most of those were not there at the very beginning.
It's AOL and Netscape.
And we're in the AOL and Netscape era right now is what I would say. Barely.
I still think, directed acyclic graphs are going to become a competitor as they get more notice. The layer zeros and the things like DAGs that I'm looking at, they're also going to compete for the throughput capabilities. This makes me think of that Solana outage. Right, we were talking about
which
Solana.
one?
Yeah, the one that happened today. Or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was yesterday or something.
The latest.
And Johnny had a really insightful graph. Remember that graph that you found that showed the transaction levels, and most of it was messaging.
We didn't see it. He tried to send it to us on the Solana network.
Yeah, I mean, it was just you could probably speak to it better, but I mean, basically, it looked like it was just overloaded with messages, and its actual throughput for transactions per second is much lower than what they bolster it to actually be, and the same problem might.
Well, it always was.
Yeah, and the same problem might potentially be there for HBAR. If you look at the actual amount of transactions that were just messages and not actual value being sent, I mean, Solana's outage. I mean, it's become a running meme right now. But I think a lot of these different networks are going to run into issues as they're adopted. And larger companies become interested in, or games, like you said, TJ. When that kind of transaction throughput need comes, the real proof in the pudding is going to be shown, because their transactions are going to be exponentially grown, and you're going to see a few of them shut down because of overload. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, I mean, I'm spread out amongst DAGs, amongst layer 2s, amongst basic layer 1s and stuff, just because you never know which one's actually going to grab that mainstream love and adoption. So far it's been Ethereum. So
yep. Although I think this is fun. We don't have to talk about this today, but I threw it in there that discusses the major issues with sharding, which actually might be fun to discuss at some point, not necessarily today.
No, that's really good.
Comment from Cryptonautic. Whichever chain can achieve 50% adoption in daily user activity in terms of value and transactions compared to ETH can be eligible to be labeled a true Ethereum killer and maybe the future winner.
Yeah, I agree. Great.
There is no Ethereum killer. Ethereum did that to itself.
Well, it hasn't yet, is what I would say. I mean, I think that's a really good point, and I think that was what Johnny was basically saying, of like, until you get anywhere close to that level of use, like what he said, daily user activity and value of transactions, great metrics to use there. And no chain has come anywhere close to that. Yeah, a lot of people have dubbed themselves Ethereum killer. I've been hearing it since Ant Shares or Neo in 2016 and 2017. That was the first one I think I heard of. That's like, oh, it's the Ethereum killer, and Tron and a lot of those. And we've seen a ton ever since then. Nobody's really ever been close. What is the newest playable character on Red Dead 3? That lost me there. Nobody's ever been close, in my opinion, on when you look at the type of activity that Ethereum gets. Yeah. And if they can solve some of these issues, it's going to get stronger. But a lot of people have plenty of time to catch up. I'm not saying, like I said.
A classic allegory here, or we'll say analogy here, is we know fiat's fundamentally flawed. We know it has issues. We know it's a terrible system.
Great.
Still use it.
Still the number one by far. And crypto hasn't even come close to competing. Like, it's starting to be in the discussion, which is why you're starting to see some of the powers of the world respond to it. They were just laughing at us for a very long time, because they're like, yeah, sure. People will use your little internet money. Sure. Think about that. But now it's starting to turn into reality, and we're not even close to 50% there. So yeah, that was a great example there. So real quick, we're going to keep spinning through this, because a lot of this is kind of what we were just talking about. So why?
Drew's photo shoot.
Yeah, there's Drew right here. That's his profile. So scaling, privacy, and flexibility are hip, harder, better, faster, stronger. What happens if major existing upcoming players in the industry are announcing to outscale / value the competition with ZK rollups and modularity? Right. Everyone else wants the ChadFi as well. So I mean,
ChadFi.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, sorry, I moved it.
I was having a moment there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Have the moment. Ready? Go.
Okay,
jawline though.
Yeah, I know, it's thick.
So ZK Catalyst, this is like many of you guys know, Polygon, Matic, ZK EVM mainnet on March 27th. Investors eagerly awaiting Starknet. Is it Stark? I always get Starknet and what's the other one?
It's Stark.
ZK Starks, right?
Yeah.
I always get them mixed up, but you've been messing with Starknet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's been your experience using Starknet so far, Johnny?
It's all right. It's a little bit more complicated. Their technology is pretty cool. They got some cool takes on account abstraction. I look forward to seeing what they're going to be putting out pretty soon. I've been following them for
ZK Sync. Have you messed with that one too?
ZK Sync. I've been messing around on their testnet. They have a whole little thing going on. They always have, you can go on Alexa, and they always have like little things that you can do to try to take part in what they're putting out. It's quite big. ZK Sync's pretty big now, so there's quite a few different platforms that are utilizing, obviously, as you guys know, utilizing their technology. So that's pretty easy to kind of get into. As far as a token, of course, everybody's speculating on token, but again, nothing's for sure. But it's pretty easy to kind of involve yourself in their tech.
What about Polygon Zero, or is this what we're about to talk about?
0x Polygon.
Is that the same thing as Polygon Zero?
I'm not sure. Let me see what you got. Yes, I believe so. Yeah. This is the one coming on March 27th. Roses are red, violets are blue, poems are hard. Mainnet beta is here.
Just fucking gave up.
Yeah. So Polygon, ZK, EVM, mainnet in beta. Again, and this is where Matic continues to develop well. The number one, I would say, well, It's debatable on who the number one layer 2 is right now.
Yeah.
Expect most of these rallies and narrative to be short. This is okay. So this is good. Good take here from the Hidden Maze on Twitter, Crypto in Black, as his username says. And I agree with this 100%. I expect most rallies and narratives to be short-lived during this bear market because, again, as we all know, tech is great, but there's a lot more that goes into making a coin pump than just tech. It's marketing, it's speculation, it's narrative, it's hype. And a lot of times the tech isn't sexy and there's not a lot of hype built around it. So most of these rallies might happen, but they could be short-lived, especially during a bear market. However, they represent previews of strong trends leading into the next bull market. And with major releases just months away, this narrative might reignite several times this year. And that's something I noticed throughout 2019. This is where I compare us to in the cycle here. 2023, in my experience, is very similar to 2019. Where things that you see, you start hearing about them, they might pump a little bit like, man, why is Loop Ring going up like crazy today and everything else is going down? Why is Optimism doing so well? Why is Matic, not going down as much as some of these other ones are? It's because smart money and people that really understand this stuff are getting into and interacting with these things now.
Yep.
They might still dump. They might still not hold up throughout this entire bear market. If Bitcoin goes back down and retests 17K, you better believe some of these ZK new projects are going to get absolutely wrecked that are existing right now in token price. And that, in my mind, that might be a big part of why some of them haven't actually launched yet, because they know it's better to launch your token going into the bull than it is to be out during the bear market. Some people take that into consideration. I've actually learned a lot of founders and people that do understand the 4-year cycle actually aren't as interested in doing that stuff, which in a lot of ways is a good thing. If you find a project is completely focused on their token price, generally speaking, that's not good for the token in the long term. And so it might be okay in the short term. So what up, Crypto Fitter?
They're probably in the tapestry industry.
What?
Rug pull?
Oh, got him.
There you go.
Got him. All right, so here's a couple that are released right now. I mentioned them earlier. Immutable X, Layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum, aiming to power the next generation of Web3 game. Already onboarded some of the most anticipated Web3 titles: Undead Blocks, Illuvium, Guild of the Guardian. So again, something to keep an eye on there. Starkware Ltd. I think that's another one you've been playing or may have been playing with, Johnny. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's the same as
Starknet and Stark War. Yeah, exactly. StarkX, Starknet, they all go together. Azero, I know a lot of you guys have mentioned Azero. It's a privacy enhancing proof of stake public blockchain with instant finality. They intend to implement privacy enhancing technologies based on zero knowledge proofs and secure multi-party computation research in 2023. That's kind of interesting. Horizon, HZN, this is another one we've heard a decent amount. Network of blockchains that uses recursive ZK snark known as Darlin. Not Darla from Little Rascals, but Darlin.
It's endearing. Let's go.
Yeah. Blockchain interoperability is enabled by Zendu, which leverages snark verification for complete freedom and consensus speed and privacy. Secret network built on Cosmos, the first blockchain with customizable privacy. You get to choose what you share with whom and how. Again, this is something that's interesting to me. It's kind of one of the ones I used in the example. Computational cost high, network cost low to medium, development difficulty, and that was kind of what BJ was alluding to. Some of these all have different trade-offs when you're using them. At least one party sees all data with ZK proofs. Computational cost medium to high, network cost low. So it's like you can have high throughput in one area and a little bit more cost in the other. You can sacrifice privacy for speed in a lot of these different areas. And so knowing what trade-off you want for where and when really matters as we're thinking through a lot of these decentralized applications. And again, I believe most of these applications will slowly move to being more decentralized as time goes on. Things will start, like right now, almost in the world of applications, almost everything is a centralized app, and we will move to the world of decentralized apps as things go on. Mina, you guys have heard me talk about Mina protocol. This is one that actually creates that world I just dictated for you guys or just talked about. What they do, they describe themselves as the lightest blockchain because its size is intended to remain constant irrespective of usage and growth. Now, how they accomplish this, I'm not exactly sure, and that's pretty interesting. It's something to look into and question. This is, again, they describe themselves. They claim this. Now, can they actually do this is a whole other question, and that's, again, where the speculation comes in. We met a guy from that was I believe on the foundation of Mina Protocol. We talked about it down here right after we had that meeting. Very interesting guy that comes from a long history. He's probably in his 70s now. He's also the #1 Bitcoin miner in Georgia, has been securing data on the internet for longer than I've been alive. So very, very smart individual. He's the one who first mentioned Mina to me. And the more I started looking into it, the more intrigued I got by it. Protocol uses ZK smart snarks, which means the end user examines that the ZKS compressed proof rather than the block's complete transaction history. Again, this is designed to keep information is more private and only share the information that's absolutely necessary for completing the action required to move you forward. Dusk, another one I've heard a decent amount. Privacy one, again, privacy great for technology, not necessarily great for speculation in my experience. I've been a big fan of Monero and Zcash and R and a lot of these things for a long time. Another thing I would say is if you're buying privacy coin off of a centralized exchange, you're doing it wrong. Peer-to-peer or mine it yourself are the two best ways. You know, most of these privacy coins will have some element of proof of work. But don't, if you're buying it on a centralized exchange and sending it to a specific wallet, don't think that that's not going to be tracked. They know. Yeah.
They know.
Syscoin, SYS, another one you guys have heard us mention. Loopring. What somebody said earlier, Loopring is a GameStop partnership. Yep. It's an open source ZK rollup protocol. It's a collection of Ethereum smart contracts and ZK circuits that allow devs to build highly secure, scalable order book based DEXs, automated market makers, and payment apps. This is the first rollup protocol deployed on Ethereum. That's why you guys have probably heard of it. It's been around a decent amount of time. Optimistic rollups that are released, and I'm just going to run through these really fast because we're running short on time here. Optimism, obviously, and again, I think the fact that Ethereum or that Coinbase Layer 2 is going to be built on their open source stack says a lot about what it can do, how quickly it can do it. It's solving for the now, not necessarily for the future. And again, that's the way I would describe Optimistic is solving for today. ZK is solving for tomorrow, kind of to BJ's point, and some other chains are solving for like, well, we don't need this ever because we've already solved today's problems and we're building for the absolute future.
At least they're good at putting on a tournament.
Yeah, and Optimism also just implemented in their stack. They can use if whoever's developing on Optimism can choose to use either optimistic rollup or ZK technology.
Oh, there you go.
The development.
And that's the kind of stuff we're going to see as more time goes on, as all of these things start to roll out. Again, adaptability, interoperability between Optimistic and ZKs to what Johnny was just saying. So next, and again, this is the one I just retweeted for you guys. Next up are 8 upcoming ZK rollup and modular projects, meaning they're not out yet. But before that, check out Crypto Schlug list below. And I retweeted this. He did a great job. He lists most are already released ZK rollup projects that aren't mentioned. And so this list right here has all kinds of, name, ticker, price, market cap, all of these things out there. Plenty more that you can go dig into. Pivx, it was interesting. Another privacy project's been around for a long time. Brian, actually, I don't know. Brian's standing here in the background. I don't know if you remember, we interviewed Pivx at a crypto conference forever ago. I remember trying to clean up that audio and it was so unusable. But really interesting guys. And they were just, like, oh, he's coming for that beard again. Watch out.
Robot. Oh god, it's just so dark. That's the best part.
He's in the dark. He's in the dark.
Do it. Let's see this.
There he is. There's Brian.
Lurking.
There he is. All right. Let's see. Upcoming. So we won't go into the upcoming ones. This will give you guys plenty to dig into. CTSI, another one that has been around, again, helping Telos, R, I just mentioned, that's Pirate Chain. So yeah, a lot of really good ones there. Let's see, what else did I have? Oh, that was this one right here. Okay, so I wanted to share this. I did. And how are we doing? Pull my screen off real quick. I want to check how we're doing on time.
We are 1 hour and 3 minutes in.
1 hour in. All right, I got to get ready to roll here pretty soon. So
ZK roll?
I got a ZK roll, guys. No, I hope you guys found this informative. I hope you guys found, this should, if this was me at home, I would have given me a lot to dig into. Again, I'm not telling you guys this stuff so you can just take it and buy it. Please don't do that. Please go dig in. A lot of these you can't necessarily do that with. Right. Go research them, understand them, read about them, interact with them. Use the wallet, use the testnet. ZK Sync, ZK Stark, Sui we talked about Loopring, we talked about Optimism, IMX. There's a ton of different projects. This is a niche. If you're interested in building niche-based portfolios, which is something I like to do, I like building ones around smart contracts. I'm actually starting to accumulate some of these and to have a solid ZK roll-up type of portfolio on the side. You know, a little Mina, a little IMX, little you know, some Loop Ring, some of these other ones, like, you know, even Matic. You know, it's a large market cap,
Right.
but you know, it doesn't matter. When we get to the bull run, there's still plenty of space for all of this stuff to run. We're way down on where we were even, I mean, what, we're November 20, not even 2 years ago. So accumulate now, ask questions now, prepare for the bull run. Even if you're not buying them now, even if you're just researching them now and building your list of these are the things I want to start to accumulate, when that time comes and you do have some money come in,
Bitcoin pulls back and you see that notification.
yeah, you can start buying some, you know, like, and again, optimism is still not a bad one. You know, layer twos, I mean, it's the layer twos that I'm looking at right now. Layer twos on Ethereum is something I'm very interested in as I've already got a handful of different smart contract platforms, whether it's Cardano or Cosmos or Ethereum or, you know, the ones I list here all the time. Like, that is kind of step one for me. Like, build yourself a solid portfolio of layer ones and layer zeros. Now start building, you know, and Bitcoin, of course. I'm always trying to get more Bitcoin. And that's part of why I'm building this ZK portfolio, is as they pump, because I think this is going to be a strong narrative. And again, we've talked about narrative trading on this channel before. You want to ride with the narratives. You don't want to get married to the narratives. You want to be able to move when the trends come, and then you take those profits and you roll them back into your longer term holds. For me, I have very few, very few, more than at this point 2.5 to 3 year holds. You know, generally speaking, at the end of each bull run, I'm going to be trying to roll most of my profits back up into Bitcoin and then maybe a handful of smart contracts. That remains to be seen by the end of this cycle. You know, we're in the accumulation zone right now. When the bull run starts, it's going to be fun. We're all going to be having fun here in 24 and 25. That's when really 25 is when the real party starts.
Yep.
And then hopefully by then we have some more indications on what the clear winners are going to be. So shout out to all you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us here in the basement. We love you as always. Oh, I didn't even say it. If you guys are watching in the attic, smash the like button. We're probably short on likes. Yeah, only 100 likes right now. We know the goal is 420 at least. So we've got 300 something people in here right now. We've got 128 likes. We can definitely get to 420 likes. So please smash the like if you want really high end, topical, great information for everybody out there on YouTube to get to learn. And hey, if we're ahead of this curve and they all go buy ZK roll-up stuff, you know, that's good for us too. So shout out to Joe the Stonkman, Rug Gang, no questionable name there, Radio Face Crypto, Wade in Idaho, Beards Lands, Crimson Caravan Company, Rojo 6969, Casino Doggy, Bitcoin Inu, Crimson Aztec World, Crypto Biggie, Power Ranger V3, Crypto Corey, Fluffy Sheep, Pete T Reddish, IoT on this GC, SAS Finance, Baron Davies, Bad Manolite, Das Giggler, Crypto Tony, Razmataz, Beard Lance. As always, we love all of you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Buy some
Have a great
Bitcoin.
day.
Hug a friend.
Peace.
Hang out with Joel.